Hi, welcome. I'm Seth Posey, head of school at Woodland Hills Private School. Today, I'm going to be taking a few moments to walk you through our 2020 action plan. We're going to be talking a little bit about where the school's been, where we are now, and where we're going in the future. Enjoy. Our conversation is going to be couched in the WASC accreditation process. But at the highest level, what that really means is being able to talk about how everything we've done over the last 6 years since our most recent accreditation renewal aligns with the values of our school and is good for kids. And also being able to share with you some of our plans for the next 6 years and beyond. And so when we hosted our parent talk about this last week, we started by looking at a list of evidence. These are some of the items that are already linked in the report that our committee is looking at. This is linked below the video so you can see a more detailed list. But again, at a high level, this is looking at the kinds of resources that we have for parents and staff, student assessment data, how do we know the kids are learning, parent survey data, which is something that we'll address in more detail in this conversation, and then some of our future action plans. None of this is top secret, but because some of these items are in process, they may not all be things that you can read about on the website. So I'm excited to go through some of them with you today. We're going to be taking a look at the various sections that are part of the accreditation report. So these include the community profile, which is essentially a deep dive into who the students and families are that we serve. Student achievement information, so how do we know that kids are learning? We'll look at our progress report. This is an update on some of the things that we've done since our previous accreditation renewal 6 years ago. We'll provide some analysis of the program, curriculum, and some of our internal systems. And then we'll be talking about our action plan, some of the big overarching goals for the next 6 years and beyond. I'm going to highlight a few areas from the community profile that I think are important or that might even surprise you a little bit. One of those is student demographic information. So we're located in the community of Woodland Hills that's approximately 70% white, but almost half of our elementary population is non-white. And while I realize that's only one possible measure of diversity, it seems to be an indicator that we're attracting a more diverse student population than the community in which we're located. Something else that has ticked up a lot over the last decade is the gifted population in our program. And so we'll talk a little bit about why that might be, as well as some of the ways that the program has evolved and been adapted to meet the needs of these learners, but also in ways that are just good for all kids. We'll talk a little bit about neurodiversity and what that means and how we've adapted our program to meet the needs of different kinds of learners. We'll talk a little bit about why families choose this program, where they come from, where they go after they graduate. And then one thing I'm really excited to dig into a little bit more is parent perceptions. So looking at some of your answers on parent surveys and other forms of feedback and what we do with that information. Something that you might not always think about when it comes to a school and a program is the program really needs to be designed around the families that you serve. So if you think about this, it's kind of a chicken or the egg question, right? We're a private school, so we should be recruiting families that align with the mission and the program of our school. But that also means that as the student population or family population changes over time, we need to constantly ensure that this program is designed for the families and the kids that we serve. Every curriculum has pros and cons, and we can talk a little bit about what some of those are as we go through. But a big piece of this chicken or the egg question is we need to be able to know as a school who we are and who we're not. And we need to be able to help parents understand that too in the admissions process. We serve a diverse school population, and that doesn't just mean ethnic diversity, it means diversity in learning styles. And what we believe is that a carefully selected program can help make the learning accessible to all different kinds of kids. So just a couple examples. Words Their Way, which is the spelling program we use. It uses more of a critical thinking approach over memorization, and we believe it's the best program out there right now for teaching spelling to all kids. but it's rooted in Orton Gillingham strategies, which it turns out are the strategies used to teach kids who have dyslexia. Another example, when we selected Singapore Math and some other aspects of our program, we really liked that there was reduced transfer. So kids absolutely have to learn to read and write. That's not negotiable. But in our math program, for example, there are a lot of tools for reducing the amount of transfer. So kids aren't just copying information over. Instead, they're using their brains and their critical thinking. Similarly, when we've gone to this more inquiry-based approach in preschool and elementary, it's because we know we can get more out of kids if we really develop the lessons and units of study around their interests. And in fact, this is one of the top best practices for gifted learners, but it's good for all kids. What we understand is that most kids, whether they're gifted or dyslexic or whatever else, may be strong in some areas and not as strong in others. And that's part of the reason why we do so much goal setting with kids, because we want to understand their individual strengths. We also need to have a very specific plan in place to help them in the areas where they're not as strong. One of the things we really dig into in the community profile is parent survey data. So 3 years ago, we standardized the questions in our end of year parent survey so that we could look at progress over time. And we start at the very highest level. Would parents recommend us to other families? I'm excited to share that there is some good growth in those areas. I'm going to turn off the camera so you can see the other end of the graph. But there's still some parents who say they maybe disagree or strongly disagree. And I have to tell you, those parents are often the ones that have really valuable feedback for us. But what we find more often than not is that if there are families over here, and there'll be a few of them as we go through the survey data, most of the time it's not because our program failed them, it's because there was some kind of a values mismatch, or they didn't really fully understand what our program was all about. And that's something that we're going to try to address even more in our action plan as we go forward. We're going to dig through some more of that parent survey information together now. But what I want to point out to you is there are 3 areas that we feel if we do an extraordinary job in these areas, it will continue to improve the parent satisfaction. And so these have to do with graduate preparedness, getting kids ready for everything that's going to happen after they leave our program, being responsive to our parents. And there are a couple ways that we're really striving to do that and then measure the results. And then also really serving as experts on child development. And so there's a couple of survey questions that help us measure how you think we're doing in these areas, and we'll look at those together. So as we go through these next few slides, you'll see a lot of these data points that we think really will help to shift even more parents to where they strongly agree or strongly understand what our program is doing. On this particular slide, looking at graduate preparedness, we did look at a lot of the parent comments in this center section where they didn't have a strong opinion one way or the other. And most of those parents indicated that was simply because they had not experienced a transition yet from preschool to elementary or from elementary to middle school. I would love to see this number over here grow even more, but what we see is the majority of parents really do understand how well prepared our kids are when they leave our program. We've opened up a lot of new channels for parent engagement and information sharing, such as intake conferences and student-led conferences and some of the parent workshops this year. But how responsive do you feel we are when you bring up a concern about your individual child? There's a general growth trend here, but it's something that we're continuing to work on. Developing kids' critical thinking skills. Again, we're shooting for 100% over here, but an overwhelming majority of parents feel that this is a strength of the program. Proactive communication about how your child is doing. This is a really important value of our school. And I think as somebody who has taught in other public and private programs, I do feel that our parents get white glove service in this area. What shows on the survey is there's a general growth trend, but it's something that we're really going to continue to work at. Everyone in our school shows caring and respect and trust toward one another. Again, 100% would be the goal, but we see consistent growth year over year. So we're pleased to be able to share that with you. Teachers understand an individual child's needs and have all the tools to support that child's growth. Um, like I said, 100% would be my goal. But this is a really important area where we've done a lot of work over the last 6 years in adapting our program and a significant amount of teacher training to be able to address individual needs. So we're shooting for 100%, but we're going to keep working on this area. Appropriate opportunities for parent involvement. This, again, an area where there's been good growth. And in fact, some of the feedback that we've gotten in this area, for those maybe who didn't strongly agree, there were parents who said that they wish there were more opportunities to stream or remotely participate in some of the school events because they have busy schedules. And so that's one of the reasons why we're doing our little screencast today. It's one of the reasons why some of our teachers have started Facebook Living things like publishing parties. So we're going to continue to work on this area. School nurtures children's self-esteem. Again, good area of growth over the last 3 years. I think this is a core tenet of our program. We're not trying to build hubris in kids. We're trying to build a genuine understanding of their strengths and areas to work on, which should in turn develop their self-esteem. But it's an area to celebrate some growth. How do parents feel about the social groups for their child in our program? As with some of these other areas, there's a general growth trend. Sometimes parents may comment about the makeup of an individual class, but that's something that we really strive to promote is healthy social groups. And a lot of the ways we do that are through the social emotional curriculum, like the responsive classroom. So just to try to interpret or understand perhaps some of the reasons why we've grown in some of these areas of parent satisfaction, I think one big reason is a lot of the curricular changes that we've made over the last few years. The adoption of Singapore Math, that Words Their Way program that I was talking about, the whole balanced literacy approach, which we'll touch on just a little bit more. Emergent learning in preschool, so designing those thematic studies around what the kids are the most interested in. Inquiry learning, teaching kids how to be researchers. A lot of this really comes down to teacher professional development because so many of these programs are about the software. It's not about cracking open a textbook. It's about having the right methodology to work with kids. And then we've always taught social emotional skills, but having a structured SEL curriculum, that's something that we've really brought in over the last 6 years. And I think almost of equal or more importance to the program is the communication about that. Because remember some of those 1%ers that said, maybe they weren't so satisfied with the program? Well, a lot of it had to do with whether they really understood the value of what they were getting. And so some of those, parent engagement and communication pieces that we've added in are these grade level orientations, which will be coming up in April every year, teaching you about what to expect from your child, not just the curriculum in the year ahead. We've geared a lot of our parent workshops around the needs of this community. There's a family information handout. I'm going to link it below the video if you haven't seen it. It's supposed to really take some of the mystery out of the school year ahead, the calendar, who's who. We have a big team, and getting you to the right person who can help you. Over the last few years, we've shifted our newsletter from just sharing information about what's coming down the pike to really being a tool for parent education. We launched student-led conferences in TK through 5th grade. We're one of the only schools in the area that I know that does a round of parent-teacher conferences before school starts in the fall. We already know the curriculum and what we plan to teach kids, but we really take that time to listen to you as parents and hear from you some of your hopes and goals, fears, whatever it is for the year ahead, because we want to infuse your hopes and goals into this program. Our tours, if you've been on a school tour recently, it's maybe not excruciating, but we go to great lengths in the tours to really make sure that parents know what this program is all about and what it looks like before they sign on. And we've adopted or launched a really enhanced process for middle school counseling, which includes one-on-one counseling, a panel discussion, and a network of about 30 middle schools that our kids generally go to. So some other areas that we're still on community profile. But some other areas that are part of that community profile is looking at why do parents choose this program? And it's interesting because we are an advanced academic program, but most parents tell us that they're choosing this program because of the balance. In fact, even those families that are coming from other gifted programs where it's all about academics, they're telling us they're choosing this program not just for the academics, but because there's actually balance. And that seems to be backed up by what you say at the end of the year survey. So looking at other areas of parent satisfaction, the majority of parents feel that they're getting a good value for tuition dollars. If you happen to be a mathematician, you might have noticed that the numbers add up to slightly over 100% on this slide. This was one where parents were able to check more than one box. So there were some parents that maybe checked two boxes. But nevertheless, the majority of parents feel that the program is a good value. Similar to what I said previously, though, of course, we wish these were zeros over here, but these 1 or 2% who don't feel it was a good value more often than not had to do with a values mismatch, or parents just not really understanding some of the things that we're doing as a school. And so when I talk about changing the way we do tours and onboarding parents, we're hoping to address this and shift more folks to really understanding what they're getting and ultimately feeling that it's a good value. And then within that community profile, we also asked the students some questions. And so just to share with you a little bit about their responses, we don't feel like kids are going to be able to learn if they don't feel safe. So that was one of our first questions for the kids is, how do you feel at school? Looks like, all students feel that school is a safe place to be. Strong majority of students either agree or strongly agree that they enjoy coming to school. And then these 4% down here, that's something that we took a little bit closer look at as to why those students might be feeling that way. This one connects a little bit with the parent question about teachers really understanding children, that the children that they teach and child development. But the majority of students feel that their teacher really understands what makes them tick and what they're good at and what they need to work on. All students seem to feel that they have sufficient technology and other resources to do the work that's being asked of them. This one was interesting. So we asked kids if they could find all the books that they really wanted in our leveled library. The library in our school is leveled according to Columbia's reading system so that we can match students to appropriate books for reading instruction purposes. And you can see it's not a huge number of students, but 14% said that they maybe couldn't find books that they wanted in the library. And when we dug into this data a little bit more, these tended to be upper grade students who were reading at a high level, in many cases far above their grade level. And what they seem to be saying is that there aren't enough high level books in the library that we consider to be appropriate for their age. And so that's something that we are addressing in our action plan for the next couple of years. So then we move into the next section of the WASC report, which is how do we know that the kids are learning? And I'm going to share some data points with you just to better understand how we track that information. So there are a lot of different ways that we track data to know that our students are making progress. The three up here that are in red, the reading levels, the words their way, and the writing pathways, those all relate to Columbia's literacy program. And so we track the actual reading level, how much students grow over time. We have spelling levels in our school because it's a developmental spelling program, and we analyze the student writing samples, which in fact can tell us whether students are writing at above or below grade level. We track their math benchmark tests over time. We look at their ERB scores. So students in grades 3 through 5 take the ERB, comparing them to other students in private schools across the country. There's 10 subsections on that test. We won't go through all of them, but know that that's another piece that we monitor. We use rubrics for assessing science and social studies projects. And then this last piece at the bottom is longitudinal data. So we have a lot of kids working above grade level, but not everybody. And what we really care about is, yes, we want to get every kid to the grade level expectation and beyond. But one of the things that we think is even more important than that is making sure students are growing. If a student is below grade level, as long as they're growing, we're okay with that. But we have some mechanisms in place to identify right away if a student's growth stalls out. So all of these things are tracked at the individual student level, but for privacy purposes, I'm not able to put that in a video that's going to go out to the community. At a higher level, we look at how students are going, how they're progressing across each grade band. So you can see last year's graduating class, the amount of kids that are reading, above grade level, at grade level, because the expectations keep climbing with them. And then if there are any kids that are in this attention needed group, we have some steps that we take the second we see a student there, or in some cases, it may be a student that came into the program at that point in the year. Similarly, remember the ERB has all these different subsections, but when we compare our kids to students in other private schools across the country, you can see that about half of them in that graduating class were on this consistent path where they were above other private school kids across the country at grade level, or in that group where there's some kind of a concern, and that is one data point that we look at. Again, same thing with the ERB scores. There's a reasoning section of the ERB. With that same group of students, we're able to identify, again, it's one data point, and we compare that to their other performance in school. So what have we been up to for the last 6 years? That's really what's addressed in this section, the progress report. So one of the most important parts of this progress report is looking at what have we done over the last 6 years with our curriculum and our program. And I really will like to point out that everything that we do in our school is true to our original values. But what are our original values and where do they come from? There's another document linked below this video that explains some of our goals, our mission, and our vision. But where that really came from is our founder, Lynn Kuo, who I'm sure you see around campus frequently. And if you go to either campus, you probably see her grandchildren who are in the program. But 36 years ago, Lynn had moved here from the East Coast, had children after finishing her master's in education. And she was looking for a school that offered these three tenets really, based on the most current research, individualized approach, and had tools for teaching kids at their highest level of interest. And after not finding a school that met her standards in these areas, she decided to open her own program. So when we look at the changes we've made, it's not that the program was bad until 6 years ago and now it's good. It's that educational research has changed a lot in the last 5, 10, and 15 years. And so some of the changes that we've made are to reflect the current research. And I'm excited to show you what those are. So you might actually be surprised how much has happened in the last 6 years at our school. But to give you a little summary on some of the things that we've been working on, one thing is we've switched to a whole different approach to literacy instruction. And when we talk about the literacy program, it's readers workshop, writers workshop, words their way, the new phonics program that came out of Columbia. And there's a lot of things that I love about this approach. But one thing is it uses what's called a learning continuum over textbooks. So kids have a lot of choice in what they're reading, but when they pull these books at their level, teachers are able to assess and drill down on exactly the skills that that child needs in order to move to the next level. It's a whole different way of teaching. So yes, there's books and there are teacher guides and some of those things, but it's so much more than just textbooks. It's really a whole approach to teaching and learning. We've adopted UC Berkeley's science program, the VEX IQ robotics program that we use in our 4th and 5th grade now. We launched Catalina and AstroCamp as overnight science trips for our 4th and 5th graders. We've developed the whole new animal and nature studies program that the kids do in Barnyard that focuses on ecology, husbandry, and then evolution and genetics. We're in the process of adopting Singapore math across all grades. We adopted the whole new approach to preschool with emergent learning, where the teachers are observing students, figuring out what they're interested in, and then building those thematic studies around their highest level of interest. And we've been working on inquiry-based learning, which is really teaching kids the process for being researchers.
but just as important as the academic curriculum, and that's a lot for a school to do in 6 years. We've also made a big shift in student leadership. Leadership, I think, has always been a strength of this program for children. But we were looking at some research that came out on the leader in me, which was really adopting Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in a more age appropriate way for younger children. And some schools across the country that have been piloting this have gotten a lot of attention because it's had such positive impacts on student achievement. And so JC Dexter and I, as well as some teachers, have visited other schools across the state that were using this model, and we've adapted it for the unique needs of our program. But just a few of the things that you're seeing in that regard. Students are setting SMART goals now for reading, writing, math, personal goals as part of the leadership notebook that they use. We really use this as a tool to unlock kids' potential, and it's a great motivational tool. We've expanded some of the more formal leadership opportunities for kids in our school. So now you'll see that the upper elementary students lead the winter and spring show. We have classroom greeters that will greet you every time someone comes to visit the school. We've shifted to a leadership committee approach instead of student council. So instead of some students getting to be leaders of everybody, kids get to choose leadership committees based on what's close to their heart. And everyone has a chance to be a leader, not just some. We shifted to the student-led conference structure that we do twice a year. We give kids direct instruction on the 7 habits of highly effective people. We do bucket filling. If you haven't been at an elementary assembly on Friday, come join us one morning at 8 o'clock. Kids who got caught doing something awesome that week may get their name pulled out of the bucket just to get some recognition from their friends. And then we're in the process of launching a leadership badge program, which will be part of the students' leadership notebooks, where they can save, artifacts, and it's not for prizes, but they do get some recognition for different kinds of leadership that they have shown. But we weren't done there. We've adopted a more formal social emotional learning curriculum that comes from Responsive Classroom. And some of the components of that are morning meeting, which is basically a social skills class from approximately 8 to 8:30 every day in every elementary classroom. We work with the kids on identifying some of their hopes and goals. We do a lot of interactive modeling, which is kind of just a fancy way for saying that we do a lot of teaching of what's expected before we expect it of students. This prevents a lot of misbehavior and really helps us focus more on promoting positive behavior. Every classroom at the beginning of the year has a little constitutional convention where the kids come up with rules that they want to be governed by. They're not that different than the rules we probably would have created for them, but we take the time to get their buy-in from the beginning. Other practices that really come from Responsive Classroom but are just good teaching. Kids have a few minutes of quiet time after lunch where they can do choice activities. It's a small amount of time, but it helps them reset after coming in from playing and eating, so they're ready for their afternoon. Most classrooms end the day with closing circle, where they're able to, address certain areas if there's something that they want to work on together as a class, or take a few moments to reflect on what they've learned that day. Everyone on campus has been trained in positive teacher language. I will include a link below so you can read a little bit more about that if you're not familiar with it. And then we use logical consequences to hold kids accountable for the rules in school. And that practice comes from a Responsive Classroom. Other pieces of the progress report, we've made a huge investment in technology over the last 6 years. So we've launched one-to-one devices with our 4th and 5th graders. For lower elementary, there are iPads in all the classrooms. We've launched a robotics curriculum. We've launched coding starting as young as TK in computer class. We've made major infrastructure investments to support this because we needed Wi-Fi to support that many devices going on campus at one time. And we've hired a wonderful technology integration specialist that not only works teaching computer class, but does consults with the teachers on bigger projects in the classroom. We've done a lot with the physical space. So you might remember if you've been with us for a while, some of the preschool classrooms tended to be more primary colors. We've shifted to a whole preschool remodel to promote more of a natural environment. We leveled the school library according to Columbia's system and made the bookshelves movable so it could be a multi-purpose room. We've created more breakout rooms and breakout spaces for students to go with teachers, but so that they could have separate spaces for class sometimes as part of our individualized program. Again, if you've been with us for a while, you might know that we moved the preschool office, which used to be where my office is now, and it's now over in the breezeway so that you preschool parents have more access to the directors. We've are working on creating a emergent learning resource room. That's what's in that attic up above room 10 at the Oxnard campus. But because there are not prescribed units of study in preschool and instead the teachers are following the children's interest, we want to have all of these wonderful manipulatives available so that teachers can just know what box they want to go get and can pull it from this resource center. We've updated playgrounds. Some of you who go to Collins campus may know that we just went solar at Collins. And we've also made some changes to the parking lot. So as we sum up some of the things that are in this report, it's close to 200 pages, and I would love for everybody to read through the entire report when it becomes available later this month. But to sum up some of the areas of strength, the committee feels that we've made a lot of really wonderful curricular enhancements. We have a high level of teacher training. We've really expanded parent education in our school. You can see some of the areas where we've made gains in parent satisfaction, but we're not done. The whole social emotional curriculum that we brought in. We have a lot of tools that I've not seen in other schools to promote student leadership and personal development. A lot of the assessment tools that we've brought in are not just what's called summative assessments where you sum it all up at the end, but rather formative assessments that help the teachers know, what do I do next with this kid or this small group? We've equipped the teachers with a lot of strategies to work with different kinds of learners, but we're not done. We have an organized and meaningful process for professional development. And if you do look at the report, you'll see some of the records and logs of different initiatives that we've been working on over the last 6 years. The committee feels that we have good collaboration among stakeholders. We know that we have really supportive parent associations, and we've launched a lot of new channels for parent engagement. And so to try to sum up some of the areas for growth and things that we're going to be working on, and I'll get more specific on the next couple of slides. The areas for growth. We've launched inquiry-based learning in our school, but we feel there are more steps to come, and that's something that we're going to be working with our teachers and our students on. We've really started attracting more kids who have this gifted learning profile or are highly academically advanced, because it seems that the schools that they're coming from are not doing a good job addressing some of those more advanced learning needs. We now have a social emotional curriculum, but we want to develop or maybe even pioneer some tools to give kids a level and understand their current level with social emotional learning and have specific goals for what they can work on next, kind of like the way that our literacy program works. We want to keep working on developing individual student learning profiles. That would be some of those items that are in the leadership notebooks. But again, we're not done. We're going to continue to evaluate technology integration. We're pretty happy with the program at this time, but that's a pretty constantly evolving issue. One piece of feedback that we've gotten from quite a few parents is they'd like to see more service learning projects. So that could be visits to a nursing home, it could be homeless care packages, it could be a wide variety of things. But we're going to really be working with the student leadership committees on helping them have some more opportunities for service learning. As we mentioned, remember those 14% of students who said they couldn't always find the best books at their level. This is a process we're going to go through to curate and expand the leveled library. And we're also going to be looking at some areas of diversity and representation that we want our library to address. We feel that our program is really unique and cutting edge, and so we've already started some opportunities for other educators to come and learn at Woodland Hills Private School. One of our preschool directors is presenting at a national conference next month, but we think we can do more to serve as a training center for other educators, so that's something we're working on. We want to create a more established fundraising process, and that does not necessarily just mean asking you for money, but that's something I'm going to talk about on these couple slides as we close out the presentation. And then the last piece of feedback that we keep getting from parents is a lot of parents wish that we had a middle school or wish that certain age groups weren't waitlisted so early in the year. And so we're looking at possible expansion opportunities. Slow your roll. We're not getting a real estate agent tomorrow, but we are looking at some opportunities to expand. So in these final few slides, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 overarching goals that came out of the WASC accreditation process. There will be a download link under the video where you can download a more detailed action plan that explains some of the various steps that we're taking for each of these items. But these 3 goals are really going to guide us in 2020 and beyond. This is the only part of the report that's not 100% finalized because when the committee is on campus, March 8th through 11th, they will really be giving us their seal of approval on this action plan. And of course, we're never done. So you might even have some ideas that may be integrated into this as we go forward. So one of our 3 goals for 2020 and beyond is to continue to develop the individualized program. That's been a core tenet of our program for 36 years. But as I mentioned, educational research keeps changing. So we're going to continue to refine this program. But an important piece of that, again, is helping our prospective families and our current families understand what that is and what it's not. Because this is an individualized program with a lot of really wonderful tools and things that I haven't seen done in a lot of other schools. But it's not a one-to-one program. And if you go back to some of those parents in that 1% or the 2% where they weren't so happy, sometimes it's because they had a wrong expectation. They thought maybe a teacher was going to be able to work with their child one-on-one for multiple hours per day. And that's just not a realistic expectation in a group setting. The other piece too is of course, any school wants to run a full program all the time. But for us, it's not just about bringing families into the program. It's about helping them understand who we are and then building that relationship, the long-term relationship with families that are ultimately going to stay in our program. And then the second piece is developing tools to monitor the long-term social emotional growth. I think that our social emotional learning program is one of the strongest that I've seen. But there are very few schools that have a system for tracking data, as I previously mentioned, and then knowing exactly what to do with that student next so that they all can have clear social and emotional goals. So we're working to develop an assessment mechanism and a way to report that information to students and parents. In the previous school year, 2018-19, the maker of the SAT did a pilot study that our children participated in that is one way of assessing social emotional levels. And within the report, there is a link actually. It won't show the individual student level, but you can see by grade band some of the areas and how the students assessed according to this pilot study. And then, of course, that other piece is we feel that if we're doing these things really well, we can serve as a training center for other educators. And then lastly, on some of the overarching goals, there are some strategic enhancements that we're already planning to make. So we're going to continue to invest in the technology program. We already know that we want to augment and really work on curating our leveled library. But there are some areas where we can use partnerships to make the school even better. And so what we've found over the years is sometimes parents really want to help out in a certain area. So when we think about, the list passion projects down here like counseling or gifted education or working with learning differences. If there's a need in our school that is a lot of the kids have this need, then it's something the school's going to invest in. If it's something where a small number of students have this need, then sometimes there may be outside support that is important or necessary for students to succeed. And what we found is sometimes parents who are able to who would really like to support or give a grant or bring in some kind of special programming to support other children who have those same kinds of needs. And so we want to have some mechanisms in place to be able to let them do that. Other things, there may be some expansion efforts in our future. There are some things that we already want to do on our current campus that could be even more accelerated with parent partnerships. And so we're going to be opening up some opportunities for parents to partner with us on those initiatives. And then one that you'll probably see coming over the next, few years is Party Book. This is something that some other schools have started doing where families can sponsor special events or host a fishing excursion, wide variety of things. And they do it more as a way to help support the school. So the family may sponsor the event and tickets are sold for the event, but then the funds actually can go back to enhance the program. And so that's something else that, again, it's not a requirement for families to participate, but we want to really open up these mechanisms to help make our school even better. So in closing, we really do want you to be involved in this accreditation process. There is a parent meeting with the accreditation committee on Sunday, March 8th, so coming up next week from 2 to 3 p.m. If you can come and join us, they want to hear a little bit more from parents about your experience in the school. Please let me know and I will add you to the list. Subsequently, on Monday and Tuesday, so March 9th and 10th, in the afternoon, there are some focus groups with teachers and parents where there will be a light reading assignment in advance, but they'll be looking at some of these other areas of like the academic or social curriculum or parent engagement. And we would love for parents to be part of those focus groups with some of our staff. So if you have time on either of those days, please let me know. I can share with you an advanced copy of that, section of the report, and we would love to have you be part of the process. In closing, obviously, as we go forward, you're going to hear a lot more about the steps that we're taking and how our school is continuing to evolve. As I mentioned, there are a number of links below the video, so you'll be able to learn a little bit more about some of the things we talked about. And thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about us. Have a great day.